If you were in a relationship with a narcissist, a malignant narcissist, you probably felt like you were on an emotional roller coaster with super highs, horrible lows, and nothing in the middle. One of the reasons why that happens is because narcissists engage in black and white thinking. We usually think of borderlines having black and white thinking, but narcissists as well have black and white thinking, or all or nothing thinking. People that use black and white thinking use terms that are polarized. So somebody is either always doing this or they are never doing that. And they don't see anything in the middle. So let's say, for example, you are the one that always buys the groceries. Let's say for the past 3 months, you haven't forgotten anything on the list. However, one day you forget something. If the other person is a narcissist, the second you forget once, they will forget the 3 months of the times that you didn't forget, and they will focus on that one thing you did or didn't do and highlight that. So obviously, when you're in a relationship with somebody that is that much of an extremist, the relationship's going to feel like it's out of control, like you're on an emotional roller coaster. In this video, I want to talk about why the narcissists do this, because there's actually a functionality for their dysfunction, and that's what we're going to talk about today. There's a phrase a lot of people say, is there a method to their madness? Well, unfortunately, with the narcissist, they engage in a lot of manipulative behaviors on purpose, and it's because of what they can get out of it. So let's find out why they do this all or nothing thinking. One reason why they engage in black and white thinking is because it creates learned helplessness in their victims. So if you always do this wrong, if you never can make them happy, if you constantly fail at everything, right? What that does is it erodes your self-confidence, your belief in yourself, even the way you view your own self-worth. And when that gets eroded, a lot of people give up and think, well, I don't deserve better. I'm unlovable. I have no value. And that's exactly why the toxic person does that. They never give you credit for what you do, but they constantly highlight what you don't do so that little by little, your ability to see your own worth diminishes. If you don't feel worthy, you will put up with behavior that is unacceptable, and that's what they're counting on. Another reason why their dysfunction has function for them is because when they engage in black and white thinking, it provokes their victims into defensiveness. So if the narcissist says, you never remember to bring everything home on the list, because it's so extreme and because it's also a lie and it's false and it's completely minimizing the 3 months that you didn't forget, and this is a small example that I'm giving, I'm just trying to highlight the point. Because they're not seeing that, sometimes the victim feels like they have to show the evidence, they have to prove it to the toxic person, because they know that the accusation by the toxic person is a lie, it's false. That's exactly what they want you to do. Because by trying to defend yourself, okay, a few things are happening when they get you into that position. The first thing is that you're coming from a disempowered place inside. Because think about it, if you knew the truth and you were convinced of your own worth, then you wouldn't have to convince somebody else. You would know, and you would look at the person like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. I can't believe you're acting that way. You would have the ability to look at things that way. But because, just like the first point, they've already eroded your self-esteem, your ability to see your own worth, now they're provoking you to defensiveness. It doesn't make you feel empowered. And the problem with defensiveness as well is that because you're constantly trying to defend yourself and have the toxic person agree with your reality, and they never do, you begin to lose touch with your ability to validate your own reality. After years of this behavior, and one thing that narcissists are is consistent, right? So after years of this consistent behavior towards their victim, many lose the ability to feel good about themselves, to see their worth without the stamp of approval of the toxic person. I can't tell you how many people in my face-to-face coaching that I work with that I can see are absolutely amazing people, but they can't see it. And even if I told them that I see it, they wouldn't believe it from me. They have developed a need to hear it from the abuser if they're still in the relationship. My goal is always to help them to relearn how to see themselves through their own eyes and not through the eyes of the toxic person. But that's why narcissists use that black and white thinking, because it creates that defensiveness in you, which oftentimes leads to you acting in ways that you wouldn't normally act. You wind up responding in a provoked state. You wind up getting exasperated. You raise your voice. You do things that aren't really you. So that serves them, right? So they can point the finger and say, well, look at how you're acting. Forget my behaviors, look at you. But on top of it, it takes away your ability to validate your own reality. Another dysfunctional function of black and white thinking for narcissists is the fact that it removes responsibility from them. So, for example, if you always do things that get them mad, if you constantly provoke them, if you never know how to make them happy, then nobody's focusing on what they are or are not contributing to the relationship, because they're focusing on highlighting negative things in you. And if you don't realize why they're doing it, that there's actually a method to their madness, then you're defending yourself. You're starting to view yourself through their eyes. Your self-esteem is breaking. So they're focused on who you are or aren't, and you're focused on who you are or aren't. And nobody is focused on their part of the relationship and what they're doing to contribute to the misery of the relationship. And for the few times that you try to show them that and you try to point that out to them, because they are expert manipulators, as you're trying to prove, when you're trying to prove to a narcissist something, you have entered into the ring with an expert manipulator who's going to spin you around in circles in a conversation, a drama battle that's going to end with you feeling drained and probably apologizing. You probably won't know what you're apologizing for, but you just want the drama cycle to end and nothing gets resolved. It also removes guilt or the need for guilt from the narcissist's viewpoint. So guilt is a healthy emotion. I'm not talking about shame. Shame is feeling bad for who you are, but guilt is feeling bad if you've done something to hurt somebody else. And we've all hurt somebody else. We've all acted in a way that we wished we hadn't. We've all done or said things that we wish we could take back. And when we feel bad about that, that's good. That's healthy. And it should motivate us to apologize. It should motivate us to really self-reflect and look at ourselves and see what we need to work on so that we can be a better person, right? However, the narcissist doesn't want to look at themselves. They don't want to change perfection, right? Why would they want to change perfection? So their way around that is to use that black and white thinking. If they act in a way that hurts you, it's always your fault because you always do this or you never do that, and you always provoke them to anger. You always start the problem. You always are too sensitive. Whatever the accusation, it's always to an extreme, and it gets them away from having to apologize or feel guilt, which should motivate them to change and want to be a better person. And the last reason, not that this is an all-inclusive list, but the last reason for the sake of this video that I'm going to mention as to why they engage in black and white thinking is because it serves them in a very powerful way. By making you feel that you always or you never, whatever, then what they're basically saying, the belief that they're driving into you is that you aren't enough. You're deficient, right? No matter how hard you try, you never make them happy. So they're basically trying to drill into you that you're not enough. Well, that wakes up a dormant shame wound. Okay, so I've done videos on this. I'm going to leave a link here for anyone that hasn't seen any of those videos. But basically, a dormant shame wound is maybe as a child, you were made to not feel enough. Whether it was by your parents, maybe it was in school, maybe it was with friends, who knows? But there was some kind of a wound where it was powerful enough that where you didn't feel good enough, okay? As the years went on, you may have learned how to just kind of compartmentalize that shame, and it didn't bother you. It didn't affect you. It was dormant, right? Didn't affect your life at all. Well, if a narcissist comes along and you're in a relationship with them, when they provoke you to not feeling enough, not only are they hurting you in the present, but they're opening up that wound to the past, that shame wound that hasn't been healed yet. And this serves the narcissist very well, because when that shame wound is opened, right, the desire to heal that is very intense, and it's a little bit unbalanced in the sense that it's almost like the feelings you had as a child are now in your present life. For example, bear with me for a second. This does make sense. Okay. So for example, as a child, when you were made to feel shame, and that's a very powerful and intense feeling, even for an adult. Imagine a child having to feel that, right? You needed an adult to heal that wound. You could not do it on your own. It was impossible, right? You didn't have the emotional literacy, the emotional intelligence to be able to work through shame as a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, 9-year-old. You just didn't have the ability to do that on your own. Well, that shame wound that's been opened from your childhood, you think, until you understand the dynamics of that shame wound and how our past pains affect our present, you can tend to think that you need them, the person that's making you feel shame, you need them to heal your shame in order for it to go away. There's this thought that if I could just find the secret formula to make this person happy, then I will be enough. Well, that thinking really is from childhood. It's probably how you thought as a child. If I could just find the right way to make my parent happy, they will love me. And now you're recreating that with a toxic person who is never going to make you feel enough. So if you don't realize that, you wind up stuck in a hamster wheel where you're giving and giving until you're giving out of your excess, right? And you're trying harder and harder and giving more and more to a person that you don't even realize is giving less and less and doing less and less. It becomes a very one-sided relationship that is not only unhappy, right? But it can also lead to physical illness because you are just giving beyond your means. And then what you are getting back is so toxic. So when narcissists use that all or nothing thinking, it wakes up that shame wound that you think they need to heal. What you don't realize is that now you're an adult. As a child, you couldn't heal it on your own. But as an adult, things are different. So anyway, for the sake of this video, I just wanted to talk about the why narcissists engage in black and white thinking, because when we don't understand why, we're trying to resolve things with somebody that doesn't want to resolve anything. We're trying to reason with somebody that doesn't want to reason with us. We're trying to provide evidence to somebody that could care less about the evidence because all they want is drama. And it just leads to more emotional distress. But once we understand why they're doing what they're doing, we can begin separating ourselves from behaviors that are causing us to feel drained. So one of the things that I like to do in my videos is not only point out and help you to identify toxic behaviors and to understand why people engage in them, But more importantly, I like to help you to know how to handle it in a way that helps you to feel more empowered and grounded and happy within. Okay, so if you're interested in learning how to handle the narcissist's polarized way of handling everything, make sure that you subscribe and hit that bell icon, because that is my next video.